Hello, Narnach here. Welcome back to Path of Exile. This is the Fall of Oriath beta, and I'm currently finding myself in the Aspirants Plaza, which has been reworked so that it will serve as a hub for all of your Labyrinth exploring pleasures. On normal, you still complete your regular 6 trials. In Cruel, well, they still have it labeled as Cruel, but of course Cruel and Merciless are no longer there. But in part 2, Acts 6 and 7, the trials that you do, the same ones as you would normally do in normal difficulty. The lower prison, the crypt and the chamber of sins. Once you've completed them, you can unlock the option here to select the Cruel Labyrinth, and once you activate it, the door will open and you will enter the level 55 Labyrinth. One thing to keep in mind, and this is just beta specific. For the 3.0 live, I suspect things will be different. Once you defeat Arakali in the Temple of Decay, you will receive a permanent negative 30 resistance penalty to your elemental and chaos resistances. So if you've done that once, your resists are gonna be foobarred quite a bit. And interestingly, the last trials are the Crypt and the Chamber of Sins. So if you do the Labyrinth after those, or just before you go to Arakali, in the beta you will actually be able to do the Labyrinth with more resistances. But that said, let's go.
The goddess is watching.
I'm currently level 61. After defeating Arakali, I have run the areas around there a couple more times. I have tried to do Arakali once more, and I got absolutely massacred. The amount of chaos damage that Arakali does is it's completely off the charts in comparison to any other boss we have in the game. And if you have nearly negative 40% chaos resistance, you're taking a lot more chaos damage than you would at negative 10% chaos resistance, which I had my first time through, and there I barely survived it. But yeah, you will need chaos resistance to face Arakali properly. So it actually became an important resistance that you can no longer ignore until you start running maps. Speaking of maps, I've been running in the areas around Arakali a little bit in order to get myself to level 60, and that is the level I tried to run my first map. It is slow, but if you're steady and you completely tank yourself up, it can be done. Just make sure only roll either just plain white maps or roll blue maps. And basically try to roll things like reduce flask charges gained and then other kinds of things that don't have any impact on the damage output or your tanking capability. And then with some caution you should be able to plow through. If you roll added damage as a melee build like this, yeah, it's gonna be painful. So in my case, because I'm running Iron Reflexes, I've got a Stibnite Flask and a Jade Flask that boosts my armor. Together they boost my armor from about 6,000 to 22,000. And if you combine that with the Tukahama Soul, Tukahama Soul, gain additional physical damage while standing still. And here, it's some damage over time that we take less from. So all of that, it makes me relatively tanky, especially if I'm standing still for a while. So with that, I did manage to run the Crystal Veins, or the Crystal Ore map, tier 1 map, successfully. Though there will be some hitting, some running, and especially yellow map mods or mobs with modifiers that significantly increase their damage. Be very careful of them, because they can 2 or 3 hit you. Basically think of every yellow as a unique mob, and you're not too far off in terms of doing maps under leveled. But the interesting thing is, you can actually do it and you gain quite some XP. Okay, golden door is here, then the way forward is probably there. But I realized let's do the Labyrinth first. Gear up a little bit. Or no, gain some more skills here. State enclosure, that's looks like a side area. Let's double check. Yeah. With a golden key. Okay, we're taking quite some damage there. Okay, that looks like we can go forward here. Look, lever. That's the correct lever. Okay. We go up there. It's a 55 area. I'm currently 61. So, well, in terms of areas to farm, if the area around Arakali is not entirely to your liking, you could farm a Labyrinth for experience as well. There's plenty of mobs here, plenty of things to kill, plenty of XP to gain, and plenty of loot to drop. Because otherwise, the only level 55 area in the beta right now will be the Temple of Decay level 2. Level 1 is a 54 area, and a bit of personal preference here, but I didn't quite like the areas around the Temple of Decay at the end of Act 7. They felt too spaced out, too many walls, and in terms of farming, there was just a lot of running around and fighting small packs rather than being able to just string together larger groups of monsters and run them efficiently. Of course, especially once you get a little adept at actually running the Labyrinth, you can keep rerolling enchants on your boots and your gloves for the cruel version. So there are some upgrades there. Hetman swords. So because my usual loot filter doesn't have the purple outlines, because normally I end up at maps over-leveled rather than 8 levels or 7 levels under-leveled. So in order to do that, I was actually interested in the items that were roughly level 55 and above. Basically all the items that could drop after Act 7 that can drop in maps, but of course because we don't have access to Act 8, 9 and 10 we couldn't normally find them. But they would be upgrades for us. So added a couple of quick rules to the loot filter to just make all the items stand out with a bit of a purplish haze. That way at least they stand out in maps. I probably could have made a small change to it, that it would only work in maps for item level 68 and above. Oh well. I was not actually considering the Labyrinth at that time. Some good old-fashioned random wandering through the Labyrinth. So locked door there, so then we go through. And there's a lever. And don't forget the golden key.
There must be a golden door.
Okay, please don't skewer me. Thank you. You too. And then we can move forward. Most likely towards the first of the trials. That said, I think the normal lab got shortened a little bit, but not entirely sure about the cruel version. But the only way to find out is to see.
Let the day dawn golden with possibility.
Hello there. Face reflect. Luckily for us, we don't really care too much about that. Because we're just not doing a large amount of physical damage, we're just doing lots of small hits and we have some leech to compensate. So it's all good. Yeah, let's just keep sticking to the top end here. There's a decent amount of loot to be had here. Normally, when I run the labyrinths, I'm massively overleveled and the loot is not relevant. Here, it's actually the most efficient means of gaining a new loot until you start running maps, or at least the most efficient means of gaining equipable loot. On weapon switch, I'm leveling up a couple of skill gems, which I want to experiment with at some point to see if I can get at least a little bit of poison damage to stack up. Because right now, most of the damage I'm doing is simply with my Viper Strike hit. And the poison damage that I'm inflicting is, let's just call it, not overly impressive. Actually have a quick look here. Main hand, and just poison damage here is 50 to 100 damage per stack.
The weary traveler draws close to the end of the path.
So at just over 3 attacks per second and 75 average damage per poison stack. That's 225 damage per second that you add per second. And poison, it lasts for, I think for this build it's about around 13 seconds, and then you also have the efficiency from Temporal change.
Strength to one's enemies.
But 225 DPS that you add on top compared to Viper Strike, which is right now 3000 DPS. Let's see. And that actually seems to ignore the Bloodlust. That also adds another 45% increased damage. Hello there with your totem things. And also let's keep Fortify up.
You were born for this.
That was that. Yes, exactly. Okay, second time through.
Of second chances.
Okay, didn't get a display glitch here this time, that's good. Last time I did lab, I actually had a black screen when standing in front of the door. Well, only the game area, the GUI and the labels and things were still there. It was just a rendering glitch. But yeah, I wanna see right now, scaling, hey, oh, this is also nice. The secrets are now actually shown on the map. That makes it a lot easier to navigate through, though in the bigger picture it's still very difficult to actually determine where the heck you are in the world. Most of the time down on the map is, well, walking backwards, but at least we'll know there's a map there, so then we know where we are. Sepulchre Atrium, which is the next area, so that is good. Let's just double check that the atrium is indeed the area we came from. Yeah. So we advanced an area. Let's see how many areas were there. That's 1, 2, 3 ways forward. Interesting. Potentially one of them is the actual way to the boss fight. So let's look for it. But as I was talking, Viper Strike currently using melee physical, Bloodlust and Multistrike to scale it. Also, let's not stand still in this. So melee physical only scales the physical damage, it doesn't scale poison. Bloodlust is the same, but it also requires that the target is actually bleeding before it does something. But it's a very effective way to scale your damage. So if you're inflicting bleeding like I am with Puncture, it's a no-brainer because it just amplifies your hit damage. It doesn't amplify the poison damage. See, it freezes me, so let's just undo that. And no, this build has been pretty good so far, doing reasonable damage. I think with the current DPS the leech is actually slowly starting to stack up, so there's that. But I'm not really doing too much with the poison damage. Annex, that's a side building, but let's just mark it. Oh, that one was over there. But oh, right now 75 damage per DPS per stack. Stacks last for about 12 seconds. Apply 3 stacks per second, so that's about 36 to 40 stacks, depending a little bit on at least 36 stacks of poison that you can apply. And then we of course have Temporal change that makes effects expire 40% slower. So that's basically a 40% more duration multiplier for the duration of poison stacks. And there's a couple of other things that we can do later on to increase the duration even further. It's like the science skill duration wheel, we can use that as well. And an increased duration support gem is also an option. But you know, if you've got poison stacks that last for 12 seconds, you need to be striking mobs 12 seconds in a row to actually max out, and I think that is alright.
When the time comes to strike, an emperor strikes without hesitation. To entertain doubt is to dance with death.
So, what do they do? Nah, yeah, just cast beacons, that's alright.
Complex machinations converge to a single act of power.
Okay, that's just more charges, that's alright, we can deal with that. Let's just armor up, keep Fortify up, keep endurance charges up. I don't really see the charges on him, but let's just disrupt him anyway. And then one more.
Such resilience.
Exactly. Okay.
Even the grandest designs can be dismantled.
Okay. Back to the topic of scaling poison damage. If we apply 36 stacks of poison damage that do 75 DPS each. Also, is this the way forward? Yes, it is. Then we're gonna do somewhere in the order of magnitude of around 2500 DPS with poison. After we have been attacking a single target for 12 seconds straight, applying all those 36 charges. I think I got myself skewered outside of the game loop. If you compare that to just hitting the target for with Puncture once to cause bleeding, and after that hitting them with Viper Strike, and then just keep hitting them for Viper Strike for 5 seconds straight until you need to reapply your bleeding again, you can apply nearly 4500 DPS, which basically the same setup. So yeah, 4500 versus 2500. Yeah, if you keep attacking it, then your poison damage is going to be 1/3 of your total DPS output. If you consistently attack the target for 12 seconds straight. If not, then your percentage of poison damage that you do is going to be significantly lower. So what I was thinking of is, okay, what if we just simply drop the skills that don't affect poison? So Multistrike, it increases your attack speed. That one gets to stay. It reduces your melee attack damage. but the reduction to the melee damage doesn't affect poison. So it's basically a free way of scaling your poison. Then you have increased attack speed that you can use to attack more times per second and therefore apply more poison stacks faster and get to a higher total count of poison stacks faster. And after that you have other gems like Void Manipulation, which increases the chaos damage done with a skill. Let's see, then we need to be one up on the side and one up. That increases the chaos damage, and you got Rapid Decay, which reduces the duration of effect, but it increases the damage over time as a more multiplier. So Void Manipulation plus Rapid Decay plus faster attacks plus Viper Strike seems like an alternative way to scale it. Also, let me just have a look here. I think I'm gonna lock myself out if I level Molten Shell up once more. What was that again? Cast damage taken, 58. 58. 50. Oh no wait, it's 55 still. So yeah, it can be leveled and it's still gonna autocast. Okay. So if you take the current 75 average damage per hit and we add a 30% more multiplier and then we add another 30% more multiplier, then we're getting a, I think that's gonna be a 69% more damage multiplier if you combine the two 30%. And we're gonna attack faster as well. So let's say we go from 3 to 4 attacks per second. Let's domain enclosure. That seems like a side area. Let's just map it out anyway. Okay, this was a dead end. That's good to know. Then the other one is the way forward, and it will go to the side. So green boots are pure evasion. I might as well bring them. Basilica holes. Okay. So 70% more damage on average of 75. That's gonna be about 120 damage per second. Times 4 is gonna be about 500. So you'll be adding 500 DPS per second to it. Hello there, Ghosty. Of course, you still have some underlying damage, but... Ooh. Hello. 6-socket dragon scale. And there's the final aspirant's trial.
An aspirant can afford to be promising. An emperor must keep those promises.
But no, I just want to see if we push the poison effect to its extremes, if we can see if that is actually viable or whether it still needs some tuning.
Navigate your empire through troubled waters.
Hello there, mister. Okay, let's just fortify here. Let's just not get struck. Also, just put the charges up. And then let's see what we do if we completely tank up here. Ooh, that was a fun one. Jumping the moment you get teleported, then you get some weird anchoring issues. Okay, teleporting me into the lava. Sure, why won't you? Must admit, this version of the lab is relatively doable. And there we are. So now we get currency. I approve. I approve. And then we have 2 more Ascendancy points. So we're gonna go over here, we get more attack damage leached, and we get 10% of maximum life per second added to our maximum life leech rate. That takes us from 33% of our max life leech per second up to 43%, as well as 100% increased life leech per second. And we can't be stunned while leeching, and we're immune to bleeding while leeching. And of course, because of Endless Hunger earlier, we already get overkill damage leached as life, so that's basically the same damage that we also inflict as Ignite with Herald of Ash. We also start leeching it, so we're pretty efficient for the overkill there. And leech doesn't get removed once we hit max life, which is just glorious. Something else to consider: increased area of effect weapon damage. And then over here, single target melee attacks deal splash damage to surrounding targets with for half of the damage, and we get increased area of effect. So this could also be interesting. Basically, you give yourself the option to replace the melee splash on Puncture and put something else on, potentially putting a poison gem in there. So you can inflict poison with Puncture as well as inflicting bleeding. And then your Viper Strike will suddenly also start to inflict area damage to mobs around it. So then, especially if you're facing a boss, you don't really have to swap around. And of course the Multistrike going around doesn't really matter because you're still inflicting bleeding attacks on the boss. So that is something to consider. But in this case, I think I'm just going to go for Brutal Fervor in order to just maximize sustainability. And especially if we're not really going to go for a poison specific build, then just having more leech with the attacks is just going to help us stay alive. Because especially now, we're a bit undergeared. So we can use all the help we can get. Let's see, what does the Divine Font grant us? Can we get a Word of Reflection again, please? We get an Edict of Frost. Okay. Fire a Nova of Icy Projectiles. That's 9 projectiles that do decent cold damage. Sure, that's just free damage. Can't complain too much about free damage, right? So with that, we can move back to town. And now we have achieved yet another objective and had a good look at the Esperance Plaza. So for me, the only thing that now remains is to keep running some maps. So I will be making my way over here to Doriani's laboratory in order to run a couple maps. So I expect a video of that soon as well. I don't think I've ever actually made a video of pretty massively under-leveled map running. So if you want to see slow and steady, that is definitely going to be slow and steady. But with that, I'm going to thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye bye.